Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Next, we look into the shareholder and stakeholder theory. So for the shareholder, there is one and only one social responsibility of business to use its resources and engage in activities designed to increase its profits, so long as it stays within the rule of the game, which is to say engages in open and free competition without deception or fraud. This is given by Friedman 1970. So this is about the shareholder theory. And then the shareholder theory is aligned with the agency theory. Both view the relationship between the principal and the agent as paramount, and that the responsibility of management is to maximize the profit. That means the managers, they work towards the interest of the share. That means they work for the shareholders. They focus on the maximizing the return for the shareholders. Whereas you have the stakeholder theory, that means you have a wider view. So firms that manage to optimize stakeholders' satisfaction will be able to thrive better than the company that only concentrates on maximizing shareholders' interest. This is given by Freeman 1984. That means every organization or corporation was created to serve more than just its shareholders. So that means the objective of the organization is not the sole focus of the shareholder, but also to serve more than the shareholders. That means the various stakeholders. So they should serve a wide range of people that have legitimate stake in the company's outcome and performance, which serve a broad societal purposes. So if you are looking at the shareholder theory, the focus is on the corporate profit maximization, so which resulted to negative consequences such as human rights, working conditions, and environments. Why? Because your focus is more on the profit maximization for the shareholders. If you are looking at the stakeholder theory, dictates how managers morally should respond to the interests or claims of stakeholders in a proper way, as managers bear fiduciary relationship to the various stakeholders. So if you just Google, you can see for your stakeholders, you have internal stakeholders, you have external stakeholders, your employees, managers, owners, and suppliers, society, government, creditors, your shareholders, your customers. They are all your stakeholders. That means you're not only focusing on your shareholder, but you have to focus on the various more parts. And then if you see here, stakeholder versus shareholder, the words stakeholders and shareholders are often used loosely in business. The two words are commonly thought as a synonym. Okay, but hold on. Okay, what is a shareholder? A shareholder is a person or an institution that owns shares or stock or equity in a public or private operations. They are often referred to as member of a corporation, and they have a financial interest in the profitability of the organization or a project. Okay, the shareholder, you have a vested interest in the company. Okay, and then what about the stakeholder? A stakeholder can be either an individual, a group, or an organization impacted by the outcome of a project or by a business. So therefore, they have an interest in the success of a project or a business. They are either from a project group or okay. That means a stakeholder is the wider group. Okay. So if you look at the shareholder versus stakeholder, what is the difference? Or you can go into the shareholder versus stakeholder theory. Okay, so shareholder versus stakeholder theory looks at how companies interact with and hold themselves accountable to shareholders and stakeholders. One viewpoint is that a company's first responsibility is to its shareholders, of course, because they are the owners. That is your first priority. Okay, the shareholders, they have a stake, direct stake. They have put their money, they have invested in the company, and therefore its number one priority should be to increase profit as much as possible. That is the return to the shareholders. So shareholders theory was first introduced in the 1960s by Milton Friedman. So Friedman argued that the cyclical nature of business hierarchy meant that corporations are primarily responsible to their shareholders. Okay. On the other hand, stakeholder theory suggests that companies prioritize ethics and create value for all stakeholders. So not just those who hold shares. I mean, not only the shareholders, but have a wider priority or to create value to all these stakeholders. So stakeholder theory was first put forth by Dr. Edward Freeman in 1980s, along with the rise of corporate social responsibility or CSR. You remember previously we have looked into a topic of CSR. We also look into the shareholder and the stakeholder theory. It's the same thing here, okay? So the stakeholder theory has helped create better working environments and benefits for employees, particularly in industries with poor working conditions. So it's the same thing. We are looking at the stakeholder and shareholder theory when we did our CSR before. So the idea is that for the shareholder, you are saying that the responsibility of the company is only towards the shareholders to maximize the profit and provide return to the shareholders. But if you are you look at it from the stakeholder theory, you are saying that there are actually wider stakeholders, not only the shareholder. Because if you want to generate profit, then for example, you need the customers. If let's say the customers don't want to buy your goods or products, then you cannot sell. If you cannot sell your product, then where are you going to get the profit? So we have to concern about our customers as well. What about the supplier? We also need the supplier because they are the one who supply the input for our company, for example. So you also have the supplier, they also have a stake in you. So that means you also have to make sure you protect the interests of the suppliers and so on. So if you are looking at the shareholder view or shareholder theory, you are saying that the company the that means uh, the company focusing on the shareholder only. But if you are looking at the wider view, then you are saying that not only the shareholders, the company also has a responsibility towards wider stakeholders. That includes your not only your investors, but also your community at large and the supplier, the customers, the government, etc. Okay, so with that, I thank you. Hopefully, you have a better understanding of this topic. Okay, you look into what is corporate governance, and then there's some history about the corporate governance and the theories underlying the corporate governance. Okay, with that, I thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi.